David was a young man with big dreams. He had just finished college and wanted to become a writer. Living in a small town with his mother, he hoped to one day find success and make a better life for himself. One evening, while walking by the river, David met Anna, a beautiful girl from a wealthy family. She lived in a grand house on the hill, while David came from a small, simple home. Despite their different worlds, David fell deeply in love with her. But love is not always enough. Anna's mother, a proud and cold woman, refused to let her daughter marry a poor man. David believed Anna loved him, yet she chose a life of wealth and comfort over love. Heartbroken, David struggled to understand why she made this choice. Would David be able to forget Anna and move on? Or would she one day realize that love matters more than money? This is a story of love, ambition, heartbreak, and self-discovery, where one young man learns that sometimes people are not as they seem, and true happiness comes in unexpected ways.
It was a warm summer evening. David felt happy. His exams were over. College was finished. Now he needed to find a job. David wanted to be a writer and work for a newspaper, but first he needed to rest. The house was very hot, and there was no wind. "I'll go for a walk," David thought. "I'll go to the river." David lived in a small town. After a short walk, he was outside in the countryside. He walked along the river and watched the birds on the water. Suddenly, he saw a girl standing alone, looking at the water. She was young and very beautiful. She had long, dark hair and was wearing a pretty white dress. David walked up to her. "Hello," he said. "What's your name?" "I'm Anna," she answered, smiling. David and Anna talked for a long time. The sun set, and soon it was almost dark. "I must go home," Anna said. "Where do you live?" David asked. "In the big white house on the hill," Anna replied. "Where do you live?" "In the little brown house near the market," David said. They both laughed, but David felt sad. Anna's house was large and elegant. She was rich, David was poor, and David was in love. After that evening, David and Anna met by the river often. Anna always wore beautiful clothes. She always looked lovely. David thought about her all day, every day. One evening, David said, "Anna, I wrote a poem about you." He took a small piece of paper from his pocket and read aloud. "I met her in the evening by the riverside. Her dress was creamy white and her hair was tied. She turned and smiled at me when I asked for her name. Though I am young and poor, my love will stay the same." Anna clapped her hands. "That's beautiful, David. I love your poem." David took Anna's hand and looked into her eyes. "I love you, Anna," he said. "Do you love me?" Anna smiled. "Yes, of course I love you," she said. Then she stood up. "I must go home now." David felt happy. "She loves me. Anna loves me," he thought. That night, David went home to his small, simple house. The house was poor, but it was always clean and neat. David lived there with his mother. His father had died years ago. His mother watched him carefully. "What happened, David?" she asked. "Why do you look so happy?" "It's nothing, Mother," David replied. His mother smiled. "He's in love," she thought. The next day, David met Anna again by the river. Anna looked sad, but David did not notice. He held her hand. "Anna," he said, "I am poor now, but one day I will be a famous writer." Anna did not say anything. "Will you marry me, Anna?" David continued. "Say yes. We will be so happy, and—" He stopped. Anna looked at him with tears in her eyes. Slowly, she shook her head. Then, without a word, she turned and ran away. "Anna!" David called. But she was gone. David walked home slowly. He was confused. "What is wrong?" he thought. "She loves me, doesn't she?" When he reached home, his mother saw his face. "Poor boy," she thought. "That girl doesn't love him." David and his mother ate dinner in silence. Then, suddenly, there was a knock at the door. David opened it. A man in a servant's uniform stood outside. "I'm from the house on the hill," the man said. "My mistress wants to see David." "That's me," David said. "Can you come with me now?" the servant asked. David felt excited. Maybe Anna has changed her mind, he thought. Maybe she does want to marry me. David's mother watched as he followed the servant. She sighed. "The house on the hill," she thought. "I know that family. A rich old woman and her beautiful daughter. My poor son." The house on the hill was not far. The servant led David up the wide steps and into the grand house. David's heart was beating fast. The house was rich and elegant. The floors were covered with expensive carpets. Beautiful paintings and mirrors filled the walls. David caught a glimpse of himself in one of the mirrors. He looked terrible. This house was so luxurious, and he looked so poor. The servant opened a door. David stepped inside. An old woman was sitting in a large chair. Anna stood behind her. The old woman was ugly. Her eyes were small and cold. Her mouth was thin and hard. Her hands, covered in large rings, rested in her lap. David stared at her, then looked at Anna. What a cruel-looking old woman, he thought. Is she Anna's mother? The woman spoke. "So, you want to marry my daughter?" Her voice was sharp and unfriendly. David looked at her bravely. "Yes," he said. "I love Anna, and I want to marry her." The old woman laughed. "You? A poor student? No money, no father, nothing. My daughter will never marry you." David said nothing. He looked at Anna. She did not look at him. "I am poor now," David said, "but one day I will be a famous writer." The old woman laughed again. "No," she said coldly. "My daughter is not for you. She is going to be married soon. You will never see her again." Then she stood up and left the room. Anna and David were alone. David looked at Anna, but she still did not meet his eyes. She stood silently, saying nothing. David stepped closer and put his arm around her. Anna quickly moved away. "I'm sorry, David," she said softly. "My mother is right. I can't marry you. I don't want to be poor. I want money, nice clothes, and a big car." David was shocked. "But you love me, Anna," he said, "and I love you." Anna looked at him with sad eyes. "Yes, I love you, David," she said, "but love is not enough. She hesitated, then continued. "I'm getting married in 2 weeks," she said. "Goodbye, David. I'm sorry." David left the big house. He ran down the hill to the river and sat there for a long time. Anna loves me. I know she loves me, he thought. But she is marrying another man. For money. It's her mother. She is afraid of that terrible old woman. Oh, Anna, Anna, what should I do? After a long time, David walked home. A light shone in the window of the little brown house. The door was open. His mother was waiting for him. She saw the sadness in his eyes. She put her arms around him. "They are bad people, my son," she said gently. "You must forget her." For many days, David stayed alone. He did not see his friends. His mother was worried. He did not talk to her, eat much, or sleep well. Every day he went to the river and sat there, thinking about Anna. One day he saw a headline in the newspaper, "Rich Man's Beautiful Bride." There was a picture of Anna and her husband. She wore a long white dress and a diamond necklace. Her husband was old and overweight. David felt angry and turned the newspaper over. On the back page he saw a large advertisement, "Write a story and win a prize." Young writers have a chance to win a prize and earn money. Stories can be about any topic, but must not be longer than 1,500 words. Send your story before the end of the month. David sat up straight. This is my chance, he thought. I will write the story of Anna and me. I will win, and she will read it. Then she will regret her decision. Now David was very busy. Every day he woke up early and worked hard on his story. His mother watched him and felt happy. David was eating again, smiling and talking more. Some days David liked his story. He thought it was good, but other days it was difficult. He felt sad and wanted to stop writing. Still, he did not give up. Finally, the story was done. David read it to his mother. "It's a wonderful story, David," she said. "I love it." David carefully wrote the story again and sent it to the newspaper. 2 weeks later, a letter came. David did not open it. His hands were shaking with excitement. He gave it to his mother. "You read it for me, Mother," he said. His mother opened the letter and started reading. Then she smiled, laughed, and cried at the same time. "Read it yourself," she said, handing him the letter. David read the Clarion News. "Dear Sir, we are happy to inform you that you have won first prize in the story competition. Please visit our office on Thursday at 10 a.m. The manager will present you with your prize." David jumped up with joy. He danced around the kitchen, waving the letter. "I won! I did it, Mother! Now I can be a writer. We will have money at last. I will buy you a new dress and some new furniture for the house." Then he stopped. "Will Anna see my story in the newspaper?" he asked. His mother looked at him, her smile fading. "David, do you still love that girl?" she asked. "Yes, Mother," David said softly. "I will always love her." On Thursday, David went to the newspaper office. The manager was kind and welcoming. "Your story is excellent," he said. "Very well written. Here is your prize money." He gave David an envelope. David opened it. £500. He could not believe it.
"Thank you, sir," David said, smiling. As he turned to leave, the manager stopped him. "Don't go yet. I want to talk to you. Do you have a job?" "No, sir," David replied. "I want to be a writer." The manager smiled. "Good. We need young writers like you. Come and work for our newspaper." David's eyes widened in surprise. "You want me? On your newspaper?" "Yes, yes, of course I'll come." From that day, David worked hard at the newspaper. He loved writing. His boss was happy with him and often praised his work. "We are very pleased with your progress, David," the manager told him. David was finally living his dream. David loved working at the newspaper. He worked hard, but he never stopped thinking about Anna. One day, a reporter came into the office and said, "Listen, everyone, I have big news. Do you remember Anna, the beautiful girl who married a rich man? We had a picture of their wedding in our newspaper. Well, she left her husband last week." Everyone in the office stopped talking. This was an exciting story. David froze in his chair. He felt cold. Anna left her husband? But why? They were only married for a few months, he thought. The reporter continued. Her mother died last week. When Anna heard the news, she was so shocked that she ran away from her husband. David thought about Anna's mother, that old woman. Another reporter asked, "Was Anna's mother rich?" "Oh yes, she was very rich," the first reporter said. "And now Anna will get all of her mother's money. Plus her husband gave her a lot of money, expensive clothes, jewelry, and a car. Anna is now a very, very rich woman." Another reporter shook his head. "I don't like rich women." David spoke quietly. "Anna is rich, yes, but she is also kind and gentle. She's not like other rich women." He stopped talking. The first reporter looked at him. "Do you know Anna?" David nodded. "Yes, I know her." The reporter smiled. "Well, we need someone to go to Anna's mother's funeral and write a report for the newspaper. Why don't you go, David?" The next day, David went to the funeral. The church was far away, but he walked. He wanted time to think. "Anna loved me," he thought, "but she married another man. Why? Because she was afraid of her mother. But now, her mother is dead." David felt both happy and sad. When he reached the church, he saw many people. It was a big funeral. Outside the church, there were many large black cars. The first car carried the coffin. It was covered with beautiful flowers. David stood at the back of the crowd. He took out his pencil and notebook and started writing about the funeral. Then he saw Anna. She was wearing a black dress. She looked sad but still very beautiful. She stood alone. Nobody spoke to her. Nobody went near her. The man standing next to David whispered, "That's the daughter. She is a bad woman. She left her husband, and it killed her mother. Look at her. Nobody wants to talk to her." David said nothing. Poor Anna, he thought. Everyone walked into the church, and the funeral began. After the funeral, David went home. His mother was waiting for him with a big smile. "Good news, David," she said. "Do you remember your cousin, Elsa? She is coming to stay with us. She is 17 now and very pretty. You will like her." David nodded. "Yes, I remember Elsa," he said, but he did not look happy. His mother's smile faded. He is still thinking about Anna, she thought.
Maybe Elsa will help him forget. But David didn't care about Elsa. I must see Anna, he thought. I must talk to her. David wanted to see Anna. He wanted to talk to her. Maybe she's still at the house on the hill, he thought. But when he arrived, the house looked empty. The windows had no curtains. A big sign on the gate said, "For sale." David looked inside the gate. The garden was empty. The place was completely silent. I need to go inside and look around, he thought. Maybe I will find Anna's address. Then I can write to her. He pushed the gate open and walked up the steps. Everything was quiet. The front door was locked, so he walked around the house. Then he saw an open window. David's heart started beating fast. Quickly he climbed through the window. I'm inside Anna's old home, he thought. He remembered her mother. He remembered that terrible night when the old woman refused him. But now everything was different. The room was empty. No furniture, no carpets, no paintings. David felt a little afraid. Is anyone here? He wondered. But he heard nothing. David carefully opened the door and stepped into the hallway. He looked inside every room. They were all large, but completely empty. Finally, he reached a very big room. David stopped. I know this place, he thought. This was the room where he had met Anna's mother. He remembered everything, her cold face, her sharp eyes, and the big rings on her fingers. She is gone now, David thought. Suddenly, he heard a noise. Someone was inside the house. The door opened, and a woman stood in the doorway. David's heart skipped a beat. Anna, he said. David, Anna replied. What are you doing here? I was looking for you, David said. Anna smiled. You were looking for me? David took a deep breath. Anna, why did you marry that man? Anna sighed. My mother was old. I was unhappy here. I never went to parties. I never went anywhere. I wanted money. I wanted to have fun and make friends. David nodded slowly. So, you weren't afraid of your mother. You were just tired of her. She was old, and you wanted a new life. But why did you leave your husband? Anna laughed. My husband? She said. That fat old man. He was foolish, David. He gave me money, expensive jewelry, and a car. He gave me everything. But he didn't like my friends. He liked boring old people. I like clever young people, David. I like you. You understand, don't you? David looked at her carefully. Yes, he said slowly. I understand now. Anna smiled. I'm glad. I was unhappy about you, David. I liked you. I liked your funny poems. David's heart felt heavy. My funny poems, he repeated. Then he stopped. Anna looked at him closely. You loved me, didn't you, David? She asked. Do you still love me? David took a deep breath. You are married, he said. You have a husband. Anna quickly answered, But I don't love him. I want to be free. I want to go to parties and enjoy myself. Come with me, David. I have money now. We will be happy together. David shook his head. No, Anna. No. It's over. Anna's face changed. Her eyes became small and cold. Her mouth looked thin and hard. Her fingers were covered with big rings. David stared at her. She looked just like her mother. "I'm sorry, Anna," he said. "I don't love you anymore. I loved you once, but everything is different now. Goodbye, Anna." Anna's face turned red with anger. "You can't leave me," she said. "I want you." David took one last look at her. "Go back to your husband," he said. Then he turned and walked away. David left the house on the hill and walked home. He felt free. "I was a fool," he thought. "Anna never loved me. How stupid I was. Anna is beautiful, but she is also cold and selfish. She is just like her mother. I loved her beauty, but I never really loved Anna." The evening was warm and peaceful. David felt happy. When he reached home, the door of the little brown house was open. His mother was inside, talking to a pretty young girl. "David," she said, "this is your cousin, Elsa." David smiled. "Hello, Elsa.